It is overtime here again at Old Favorite Friday, discussing incredible classic beers and giving them the love and the respect that they so rightfully deserve. And the beer that we're doing this week, as you can see, is Founders Porter. I think longtime watchers of this series will know that I was going to say I've never met a porter I didn't like. That's not true. I've met many porters I didn't like. But when it comes to the kind of old school breweries in the U.S. Specifically that have done this style and are consistently making it to this day, it's rare that I find a porter I don't like, because those beers have kind of stood the test of time. They're kind of the benchmarks for the style. I mentioned things like Bell's Porter, which is just fantastic, and things like Sierra Nevada Porter, which I don't think is in production anymore. At least I haven't seen it in years and years. Maybe it's still a local beer for them, but it was fantastic, and it was one of the first porters I ever had, and really helped to make me fall in love with the style. That's kind of the same thing with Bell's Porter. This beer's been around since 1997. It was a flagship beer for them. It did fall out of favor. They weren't doing it in production for a few years in the 2000s, but they did bring it back, and kudos to them for doing it. There's not a lot of Founders beers available in South Florida. And a lot of people know them more for like Kentucky Breakfast Stout, or otherwise known as KBS, or Canadian Breakfast Stout, CBS. But this beer is available down here, which is amazing. And it is a style that, as I just said, I love, and that it's just not as popular. It's not as commercial. There's not that many people that can come out with a porter and make it make financial sense to do as a year-round beer and a staple beer that helps to kind of drive your business, which is a shame because it's such a wonderful style, really, really underappreciated. So we have an underappreciated beer, but also an underappreciated style here for this Old Favorite Friday. This beer also I want to mention on the label and on the six-pack as well, it says, where classics never go out of style. And I love that sentiment. I think it could be kind of a subheader for Old Favorite Friday. But getting into the beer itself, this is a medium-bodied beer. It's a 6.5% porter. This hits all the right notes when you're talking about what I'm looking for a porter. You have the roasted coffee kind of notes to it. You have that bitter chocolate. You're also going to have little hints of caramel in the back. It's just very light, but adding complexity, and you pick up some dark fruit flavors, just like you kind of will from like some dark roasted coffee. It's not adding sweet flavors, but like these deep, rich, dark fruit flavors. And those are really the kind of all the boxes I want to tick when I'm having a porter. The other thing that I want to make sure is that we're not tipping over into that acrid kind of bitterness that comes from the roasted malts that we use. They're going to use hops in this beer, like all beers do, to balance out sweetness. But some of the flavors of bitterness that we are looking for in this beer usually come more from the roasted malts. And we want that to be integrated and kind of a smooth bitterness, if that makes any sense, and that we want that to balance out the residual sweetness. And this beer does a remarkable job of that. There is a little residual sweetness in here that almost borderlines on making the beer kind of creamy, I'm not going to say sweet, but there is a underlying sweetness. The overall beer is not sweet. That kind of almost seems like it would be like lactose or something. It's not. Absolutely, this is not a milk porter. But I love that kind of creamy mouthfeel that we get from the residual sweetnesses there, balanced out by that bitter chocolate, that bitter coffee, without tipping too far in the other direction. Yeah, it's just so smooth and interesting. As I cracked this open a little bit ago, and I was trying the beer, and as it's warmed up, just like I kind of say that a lot, as it warms up, it just kind of expresses so much more flavor, so much more interesting than if you're trying to drink this beer ice cold. If you're doing that, hey, that's what you like to do, but you should try it. Try to have this beer closer to room temperature than being 45 degrees or whatever it is in your fridge, because you might enjoy it more. Let's just put it that way. Maybe you won't, but you might enjoy it more. It's not a light Bud Light. It's not a Miller Lite. It's not a lager like that, a macro lager. It's something that's more dense and more complex, and it needs a warmer temperature to express those kind of flavors. I find that in pairing these beers, porters and stouts specifically, a lot of people go more towards desserts, always saying, oh, we'll do a molten lava cake with a cherry, sauce or something of that nature. And that's great. I mean, that would work really well. What I find is that going with some earthy flavors tend to work really well with porters. I tend to do grilled, marinated portobello mushroom caps with either like goat cheese, blue cheese, and red onion. Specifically, I do a balsamic marinade. I think something like that's going to go really well because it lends itself well to those earthy flavors. Those sweet, tangy flavors of the balsamic vinegar marinade can really bring out some of those more fruity aspects of the beer while also adding some acidity that the beer does not have. I mean, you have a little bit of the bitterness there, so you really kind of it's one of the things that it's a complementary pairing in some way, but it also adds something to the dish, and the dish adds something to the beer that they don't otherwise have. So that would go really, really well together. When you add in something like a goat cheese or a blue cheese that's kind of rich, those creamy flavors go really well with the porter as well, and then the kind of sharp bite of the red onion. So I know mushrooms are not for everybody, but I love that dish, and I think it would go really, really well with this porter. It can also go well if you're drinking another porter. Once again, if you can't get your hands on this beer, I think it's kind of a universally good pairing. I think this one has a little more of those kind of dark fruit notes, so it might be a little bit better. But if you had a Bell's Porter, I think it would work just as well. Yeah, I love porters. I in some ways this is kind of like an evangelist moment when I do these videos, is trying to get people that I know the people that are watching might not be brewery owners, but to get people to be excited about these classic styles, because I want more of them to be available. And whether that means that they're just available in your pub, or they're just available in your local spot and they might not be commercially widely available, that's fine. But as long as you can go to a local brewery, a brew pub, and get a good porter, I think you're going to be having a good time. We just did a really nice Baltic porter recently, different style, granted higher alcohol, used a lager yeast, and we actually put a little vanilla in ours. But it just goes to show you how versatile porters can be. You can do some of those pastry stout kind of flavors with a porter and have them come out just as well. And then also you have this beautiful base beer, if you want to call it that, of a Baltic porter or a classic kind of American porter to do other things with, or just serve to people and just say this is delicious and you're going to enjoy it. As always, I thank you guys for listening to me and following along and caring about these incredible classic beers. Please poke around the channel. Please like and subscribe, and also give us suggestions. We always love to hear suggestions about the beers that you're drinking for Old Favorite Friday, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.